Welcome, fans, to episode 3 of the Rangers Ed Rivalry Tour 2023. Today, we're going to talk about the Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is your host, Cousin Ed. I'm here with my co hosts, Coach Ed, Little Ed, and our producer, Mikey Produces. What is up, boys?
What's going on, fellas?
Long little weekend.
I hear you guys had a nice little visit this weekend from a sponsor.
Dominic Lucarelli of Lucarelli Law.
Yeah, our sponsor, friend, partner, interviewee provider. The list goes on.
But not lawyer.
No, well,
not yet.
That's a bonus. Cousin Ed mentor. What else? He does a lot, Dom.
He's
super nice guy. He's a what?
A hell of a good cook. He whipped together a nice tomato cucumber salad, it was second nature.
From the garden.
Yeah,
very nice.
I'm not gonna lie, I had a different vision of what Dom looked like in my head prior to meeting him on Sunday or whatever day it was.
Yeah,
I was expecting like a wise guy with a couple of chains, maybe some pinky rings and stuff.
You're thinking Joe Pesci's going to show up?
Yeah, you never know.
I think it's more from what Joe tells me, it's more like his brothers are like that.
You know what, Mike? That's offensive. That's offensive, Mike.
He's right there. He's right there with it. He planted a fig tree at Joe's house this weekend, my buddy Joe.
Oh, that's funny.
So he's all set.
That's offensive to the Italian American Lawyers Association.
Exactly.
No, good time. He made a point to drive down to Long Beach to get ice cream and take a picture with me and Mikey Produces with the sunset. So shout out to Dom for coming to visit. And we got a good picture. We got a good picture on the boardwalk, so I'll throw that up on Instagram. And I guess if you ever need a lawyer down in Florida, hit up Dom.
Yeah, hit up Dom at Lucarelli Law. Just Google that. You'll see his website pop right up. He's a good friend and a really good attorney, so definitely highly recommended. So you guys also play golf this weekend? You lay low? What'd you do over Labor Day?
Yeah, we played a little golf on Sunday. Went over to Lido. Coach Ed pulled some strings with his buddies over there to get us in. And we just had a nice little round out there, me, Coach, and Mikey Produces.
I would say two of us played well. I don't know about all three, but
beautiful day.
Who's the one who didn't play well, Coach?
I don't know. Coach was a little frustrated that day, if I remember correctly.
I still had low score.
I was watching.
I didn't do so hot. Not for me.
I was looking on. I saw something online. Someone posted a Family Guy clip where Peter and Lois go golfing, and Lois.
I sent it to you.
Oh, is that you sent it to me? Oh, okay. Yeah. There you go. That's where I saw it. That was hilarious. He's like, she hits. You're not supposed to hit in the water, but that's where your ball went. He throws his club, and she's like,
"We're having fun."
It went farther than your ball. Oh, so good.
That was hysterical.
Yeah, so good. But I'm excited for this one. We got. Yep.
Not good.
I say I'm excited for this one. We got Nick Brlansky from Tip of the Ice-Burgh, the podcast. Check them out on Twitter. They do a great job covering the Penguins. Obviously, the Rangers and Penguins in recent years have rekindled their rivalry pretty good, so we'll bring him on in a few. But first, Eddie, you were saying you saw Arthur Staple from The Athletic, Rangers beat writer, was talking about Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane news. It's going to be all until he signs. It's going to be constant. It's going to be rumor. I was reading today, Patrick Kane might sign with Detroit. Patrick Kane might, it's every day. It's something new. Patrick Kane.
I was going to say, does he want to just do every original 16 before he retires? But No, I didn't actually read the article. I just saw the headline, I guess.
That's an interesting trivia question. Has anybody ever played for all 6 original teams?
I was just going to say that would be a pretty cool thing to do.
We'll find out by the end of the episode.
It might take Mikey about 2 hours, so we'll figure it out tomorrow.
As long as he doesn't have a fantasy football draft this week.
I mean, how good are Arthur Staples' leads as far as rumors last year? Did they come true when he posted things, or?
I don't know if it was necessarily a lead. I think it might just be a feeling that he has, which he's kind of a whatever.
He's pretty well respected. You know, he's been a beat writer for a long time. He was an Islanders beat writer for a while. So he's respected and pretty well connected. If he says something and he says he got it from a source, I think we can trust that somebody told him it. I mean, I don't know if it's true. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but he definitely heard it from somebody who's a source. If he says that, you know, he's respected enough to at least go with that. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Patty Kane. I mean, the problem with Kane is his surgery is expected to recover like a little earlier, I think, than most teams would want. Because obviously the later he signs in the season, better it is for them in the salary cap. So if he's ready in November to sign, that's only a month into the season. Right? I think most teams are hoping it's more like January. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. And I mean, I don't even know where he would play on this team, to be honest with you. Like, aren't we just going to have the same problem we had last year if he signs? You know, I love Kane. I do want him back just from a fan perspective. But from a team building perspective, is it the right fit? I mean, I think that's something that really strongly needs to be considered. I mean, Coach, what do you think?
It's going to be interesting. I mean, all the debating is about putting the young guys up on the top 6, and now what are you going to do? Is Kane going to play third line? Like, possibly not a bad fit if he plays third line and power play, like you guys talked about last week. You know, he'll get the minutes.
Well, how important do you think it is to have like one line that you're going to say, okay, this is the defensive line. Like, this is the offensive line that, you know, what am I trying to think? Jesus, matchup line. You know, like a checking line. Is that important in today's game still? I mean, I think that's a valid question. Because if the Rangers are going to do that, it's going to be hard if you had a guy like Kane. You're going to be really, I mean, is Panarin fit for that line? Is Hedl? Is Zibanejad? Is, you know, Kakko? I don't know. A couple of those guys could do it, but you really want Zibanejad, Kakko in more offensive roles, not like just shutting down an opponent's top center. You know, you want them out there trying to score. So
I think if Kane signs with the team, it's going to be 3 legitimate lines, and like we talked about going into the playoffs, and 1 checking line. You know, you're going to rely on
maybe the 4th line.
Yeah, because you're just
not
VC
going and Bonino.
Yeah, but you don't want that line out there constantly with the other team's first line as like a matchup line.
No way.
No, definitely not.
You're going to end up again with Zibanejad matching up, and that could neuter his offense, you know, and he's probably our best shooter.
Yeah, but then you also have to think about it from the other team's perspective as, like, I mean, they have to shut down Zibanejad too. I mean, you're kind of playing the game of like, we're inferior, or the Rangers are inferior to whatever team that they're going to play in the playoffs, you know? So like, even if you're saying like, okay, Zibanejad's going to match up, I mean, this is going to be a good option or a good conversation to bring up with Nick. So maybe we should just bring him on. But like Zibanejad versus Crosby, who's shutting down who in that situation at this point in Crosby's career? You know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say? Like, yeah, obviously it's still Sidney Crosby. Obviously, I mean, maybe Connor McDavid in a Stanley Cup final, but like McDavid still kind of got to shut down Zibanejad in a way, or someone from that line. So it gets kind of
I don't think
both ways.
I don't think it becomes a shutdown situation like it used to be when we were younger, and you have guys key on certain guys. It's more of a keep away game.
Yeah,
you know, you want to keep the puck off McDavid's stick as much as you can at the other end of the ice, and so on. An interesting.
Zibanejad's also got to get to that elite level, because I know you always give me a hard time for giving him a hard time, but he has to get down to that like consistent, like every single game playoff threat for my conversation or my argument to matter.
Watching NHL Network top 20 centers right now. Meek is number 12 on their ranking.
He should be higher, or he's got to be higher than that.
12 is pretty good.
12's pretty good. When you got
good.
Connor McDavid and you had Sid ahead of him, Connor McDavid, McKinnon, you had some guys.
There's 32 teams.
How many teams made the playoffs?
12
more than
good.
12.
Well, you're telling me he's 12th in the league. That's
I'd like to see him this season get to like top 8, because then we're looking at the final 8 teams in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to have that elite top first line center, and he has to be top 10, top 8.
I think he's already there. But yeah,
I agree. He's definitely high in that rating either way.
I think the problem with Mika is that when you match up, like, I think this is what your point is, if I'm understanding. When the Rangers play the Penguins, it's been in the past Mika matching against Crosby. It hasn't been like the other team saying who's going to match up with Mika. But then again, we don't follow those other teams as closely, right? I mean, we're reading about it, but we don't really know what those teams are doing. So why don't we bring Nick on, Nick Brlansky from the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, and we'll start with this question once we do our pleasantries. Hey, Nick, what's going on, man? How are you?
Good. How are you guys? Glad to be back on.
Welcome to the podcast. You guys can check him out on Twitter at Ice-Burgh Podcast. Berg spelled like Pittsburgh. I like that little twist. Check them out. You guys are on Apple and Spotify and all that, right?
Oh yeah, anywhere you get your podcast from, and then on YouTube at Inside the Penguins. So we're doing a lot of YouTube content recently, so hopefully that keeps going into the season.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun watching like the podcast interaction on YouTube. I think that's been growing recently. So, what is it? Inside the Penguins, you said?
Yeah, Inside the Penguins on YouTube, which is just the title of the website that both me and my co-host Nick write for to cover the team.
Awesome. Yeah. So check them out if you're a Penguins fan or just a hockey fan, or a Ranger fan who wants to get mad listening to the Penguins fans talk, whatever. But so I don't know, you're backstage. You can hear what we're talking about a little bit. We're kind of focusing on Mika Zibanejad and whether, first of all, the question whether in hockey these days you even need to have like a shutdown line or a checking line, because or is 3 scoring lines fine, or do you need to have one line where you say, all right, the other team's best line we're going to put out, is Zibanejad, Kakko, and Kreider or whatever. And I'm curious, have the Penguins done that in recent years? I'm trying to think. I feel like you've had checking lines like that in the past.
They have in the past, but not in recent seasons. In recent seasons, they're just, the bottom 6 has been a recurring issue for the Pittsburgh Penguins, just trying to find an identity. And this year, it seems like they finally settled on an identity, and that's defense. Not necessarily a checking line. There's nobody that's overly physical in the Pittsburgh Penguins bottom 6, but at least they're defensively oriented and defensively focused in the bottom 6, because they had so many holes to fill. It's going to cost a lot of money to fill those holes with offensive upside talented guys. It costs a little bit less to bring in the guys that don't score as many goals but are effective defensively. And I think a big part of the conversation that you guys mentioned was what Coach Ed said. It's not as much about, let's stop the other team, is let's keep possession of the puck, like force the other team to defend us, or at least force the other team to play without the puck, especially guys that are as talented as, McDavid was brought up there, as talented as Zibanejad and even Crosby when it comes to the Penguins. Just keep the puck out of their hands, and that's the best way to defend them at this point of the game, because there's no real checking lines, because there's not enough players that actually genuinely play that physical of a game anymore.
It's true.
Well, I saw in a recent episode that you spoke about like Jeff Carter making a bounce back year. I feel like that's like a great player that kind of fits that mold that you were just talking about. Mm-hmm. Someone that you hope that could be able to produce offensively, but he's probably getting into that age, or getting into that, I guess, accepting like a checking role or like a role playing role at this point. I mean, I've always been a huge fan of Jeff Carter, just because he's such a pain in the ass, and he's always been a pain in the ass to the Rangers. So obviously that's a good player to have on your team.
Yeah, when you look
at
at
leadership.
Yeah, 100%. Especially with a bottom six that is a lot of new faces. He's somebody that hopefully, in the bottom six, he can galvanize those guys and bring them together as one unit. But I think the big thing for him is, they were reliant upon him to be the face, the top forward, the top center of the bottom six. And while he did lead the Penguins in bottom six scoring last year, he had 29 points. If that doesn't tell you the sad state of the Pittsburgh Penguins bottom six last year, I don't know what will. But, with the additions of Lars Eller and Nola Chari and Matt Nieto, I think the Pittsburgh Penguins' hope is that he gets a lesser role. He bounces over to the wing, and they just say, hey, you know what? Carter, he's a checking guy, but defensively, he really doesn't have what it takes anymore at 38 years old to really keep up with today's NHL. Just get him out there, surround him with guys that'll worry about the defense, and let him do what he does best, rip the puck and score goals. You look at his numbers throughout his career, goal scoring has been his specialty, and that's what's gotten him to a potentially Hall of Fame career. I think he's right on that line, but let him do what he does best, especially in a year that could be his last.
I have to, Nick, how you doing, by the way? Good. I have to somewhat disagree with you, because when I saw they got Jeff Carter when we played them in the playoffs 2 years ago, and I watched him, didn't they play the Islanders that year too?
Who? No. They played the Islanders the year before.
We played them in round one.
I just remember watching him, and like I say about a lot of guys, you don't watch him every day. But when you see him in the playoffs and it's every other day, I just was like, not amazed, but very honored, very good to see how positionally sound he is in the defensive zone. I think that's where he'll make up from that step that he's losing. Where he knows where to be at the right time and he's not out of position. And that's what the better veteran players can do, like Eric Stahl and so on. These guys know where to be and what's going to happen. Their vision of the game is ahead of a lot of guys. So I think they make up for it. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if your prediction comes out, but I think he's more of a steady guy that they'd have on the third and fourth line personally. I thought he played great.
Yeah, and in that playoff series, that was, a lot of Penguins say that was the beginning of the end, because after that he signed that 2-year deal with a no-move clause at $3.7 million. And, well, yeah, he was great in that series. He was great that whole season. 19 goals that season, and especially even the year before when he came over at the trade deadline. He was great, and Penguins fans were loving him up. But last year was just a year that left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. And that's why I think, we had that discussion that Little Ed brought up on today's podcast that just, he's probably primed for a bounce back, because last year was so negative for him. But, part of that was he struggled throughout the season with his legs and to keep up. But another part of that was also he was surrounded by a lot of people that probably didn't deserve to be third liners at the National Hockey League level, or at least it wasn't working last season. So, while I do think that the truth lies somewhere in the middle of what we saw last season versus what we saw the season you were talking about, Coach Ed, but I do think that he's somebody that hopefully, like you mentioned, hopefully, the veteran prowess kicks in and he's in position and he's playing well defensively. But I think the Pittsburgh Penguins would benefit from making sure that he is somebody that, listen, we need the offense from you, buddy, because we got everybody else out here in the bottom six worrying about the own zone. We need somebody to score some goals, because they did not bring that in this offseason.
Well, he's going to have to be defensively smart, because they're going to need it on the back end. They're going to need it on the back end, covering for certain guys, but whatever.
I think I know what you're alluding to.
So it's interesting, as someone who covers the Penguins, for example, when you look at the Rangers Penguins series 2 years ago, when we went into that series as fans, we were talking about who's going to cover Crosby, who's going to, how are they going to line this up, whatever, defensively and offensively, what line's going to match, when you're playing the Rangers, are the Penguins doing that for Mika, or is it just whatever, let it be,
I think that there's a concerted effort to not let your fourth line play against Mika, because if you do, you're going to get torched. But I think usually for the Pittsburgh Penguins, it doesn't matter who they're facing. Sidney Crosby's line always goes up against the opposing team's first line. The only time that they always lose that matchup seemed to be whenever we went up against Patrice Bergeron. Like, for some reason, Patrice Bergeron had, he had a lot of people's number, but he really had Sidney Crosby's number. Crosby couldn't do anything almost his entire career against him. But usually, if you're Mike Sullivan, you take that matchup. And you have a guy in Jake Gensel that defensively is okay, but really he's out there for offense. And then typically over the last couple of seasons, it's been Brian Rust. A lot of people talk about Sidney Crosby's two-way ability. Brian Rust is probably the best two-way forward on the Pittsburgh Penguins. He just doesn't get that credit that he deserves. So whenever they have those two together, they usually like to put them up against other teams' first lines and just say, hey, head to head, top to top, we're going to see who wins this battle. And for the Pittsburgh Penguins for years, the formula has been that. And then, change of pace, still having the Malkin line. But, as they get older, it comes a little bit harder. And you saw last year that the effectiveness sometimes goes down.
Yeah, the age is definitely something to talk about with Pittsburgh right now. Mm-hmm. You got an old team. Obviously stacked on paper, good lineup. You mentioned Brian Rust. Brian Rust is one of the more underrated forwards in the league, I think. He's a scrappy player. He could score. Definitely a good forechecker. So, looking at a guy like him, he's probably like 7th or 8th. I'm looking at the lineup right now. Crosby, Malkin are still there. You just added Riley Smith. He's over 30. Chris Letang, so I didn't even mention the big one you just got. I'm saving it. Fans know what I'm talking about. But how long is this going to last for Pittsburgh before they have to just blow this up?
Internally, I don't think that they really have a timetable planned out. I think they're taking it year by year at this point, especially with Kyle Dubas coming in. His job was get better because last year's team at the end of the year was not great. Now, did he get that much better this offseason with his moves? I don't know if I'd say that. He got a little bit younger. He got a little bit better in areas. He got a lot better in some areas. But I think overall the team improved marginally. And I think they're really just hoping that, like I mentioned, the bottom 6 additions help the Penguins not get hemmed into their own zone so much and not give up so much momentum. And they're really, really hoping that the top 6, specifically Crosby and Malkin, are able to duplicate the seasons they had last year. Because the Penguins finished 1 point out of a playoff spot, but let's be completely honest, that is 100% due to the work of Crosby and Malkin last year. The first time both of those guys played 82 games together in their careers, and they both were phenomenal. I mean, Crosby, 93 points. Evgeny Malkin, I believe, finished with 75 or something around that. But it was really on the backs of those two, and it's going to be again this season, which, is it sustainable? That's a different question. Last year, if they had any help anywhere else, they probably are a playoff team, but can you do it for a second straight year? And can the addition of that he who shall be named later, can that push them over the top? That's going to be the biggest question this season.
Well, it's interesting you just bring up, that was going to be one of my questions about the first time they played an 82-game season together. Mm-hmm. Like, how concerned are you about those big 4 playing or not getting injured for a full 82 games? Because I joked about on our previous episode that I think there's a good chance that all 4 of them are injured at the same exact time.
Oh, God. Don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. Jesus. No, they're all over the age. I mean, Erik Karlsson is the young buck now, 33 years old. But, I think especially when you look at last season, you hope, for Christ's sakes, can Chris Letang have, after last season, can he please just stay healthy? I know that there's going to be injuries to this team. But, of all the guys that deserve to have a fully healthy season, Chris Letang is at the top of the list. But, for the Penguins' sake, it's not just, bumps and bruises, because these guys play through bumps and bruises. They're from the old era, or at least the tail end of the old era, where they're going to play through a lot of the stuff that they're dealing with, especially considering how important they are to the team. But if you can avoid the big injuries, that's going to be the thing. Missing 15 games at a time, especially like you mentioned, if it's 2 of them at the same time, that's going to be a hard one to swallow. If it's, a forward, if it's either Crosby or Malkin, it's really going to be tough. If it's one of the 2 defensemen, I do think the Pittsburgh Penguins are equipped to more handle that. But if it's one of Crosby or Malkin, the Penguins really have no recourse to really stay afloat for more than 8 games without one of those 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So, with that in mind, we've already mentioned him. So let's just bring up the Erik Karlsson trade. I mean, the big rumor, Erik Karlsson trade, he's going to go. We hear it for, it wasn't that long. I guess it was like a month and a half. And then they started mentioning Pittsburgh as a possible destination. And all I could think was, how the hell are they going to make that happen? How is Pittsburgh going to fit Erik Karlsson in under the cap? But here we are, right? So they move out Jeff Petrie, Casey DeSmith, and Granlund and Jan Ruda. So they moved out some money there. That's about the salary of Erik Karlsson right there, right? So just generally, what are your thoughts on, leading up to the trade itself, how it may impact the Penguins? I'll give you free reign on that.
Such a Dubas trade.
100% a Dubas trade. But then again, this was an NHL, 14 double Blackberry trade too, because he essentially said, well, here's all my trouble contracts. Would you want to take those? Can we rope in a third team? Will Montreal take those contracts? And when it went through and I saw the final details, I said, that's it? Like, you're taking them? Like, to get Mikael Granlund, it is nothing short of a minor miracle that they got rid of Mikael Granlund with no repercussions. Both years, all $5 million. The only real repercussion they got salary cap wise is, one, you bring on $10 million of Erik Karlsson, and two, you retain $1.5 million of Jeff Petrie, so Montreal can flip him to his hometown team, the Detroit Red Wings. So I think when you look at that trade, it could not have ended better for Kyle Dubas. And I think at the end of the day, San Jose fans were not happy. I had a lot of San Jose fans in my comments saying, screw you and the horse you rode in on. But at the same time, it's like, listen, Greer was in a no-win situation. He got a first-round pick out of it. And at the end of the day, for a player that was not going to step foot on ice in Teal one more time, you got at least a first-round pick. You got Granlund, who on a team that's rebuilding might have an opportunity in the top 6. And really, you ridded yourself of that era of San Jose Sharks hockey, and you can start on a clean slate now. So it was a tough position for him. But, man, Kyle Dubas, in my eyes, really took advantage of that situation to push the Penguins forward a lot more by even addition by subtraction than just bringing in Erik Karlsson, who, of course, is going to be a really big factor into whether or not the Pittsburgh Penguins can get back to the team that they want to be in the tail end years of the Crosby and Malkin era.
Yeah, I mean, San Jose retained $1.5 million of Erik Karlsson as well.
Yeah.
And all they got back was a first-round pick, a conditional first-round pick. What is it? Top 10 protected, right? I think.
Yep.
So, I mean, Coach, I'm going to let you talk about Erik Karlsson a little bit because they just got it, Erik Karlsson, and this is a rivalry tour. So I'll let you talk some smack, and we'll bring Little Ed in for that too. But, I mean, you're talking about only a first-round pick for Erik Karlsson on a team that is aging out and really has probably a 2 to 3 year window here of significance before it has to completely blow the whole thing up. I mean, that first-round pick will be pointless in those 3 years, most likely. So, hell of a job by Dubas, in my opinion. But, Coach, what are your go ahead, talk some smack.
Well, I'm going to be interested to see, just like when San Jose got him, everybody got real worried because they had him and Brett Burns, and that didn't pan out that well. That kind of blew up. So I'm interested to see what's going to be going on with him and Letang.
Mm-hmm.
Letang plays a bunch of minutes. Maybe it's going to help Letang not get injured because they'll have a little less. I mean, again, it's going to be up to Mike Sullivan to manage this ice time, which is the key for most coaches. That's going to be the interesting part to see, in my opinion. I think he's a liability defensively. That's no secret to anybody who listens, but I think Letang is far better defensively.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think all-around defenseman, Chris Letang's better, and I think you're going to see Chris Letang get more ice time, specifically at 5-on-5, and he's going to play a lot more on the penalty kill because Erik Karlsson is not going to be anywhere near the ice during the penalty kill. He might as well take his skates off whenever the Penguins send somebody to the box. But no, I think that the key difference between this situation and the situation when he went to San Jose, and it's a good point. Yes, it didn't fare well. Too many cooks in the kitchen in San Jose. But I think at this point of the careers of both Letang and Karlsson, there's only one goal. They don't care about personal accolades. Erik Karlsson's coming off a 100-point season and a Norris Trophy, and that's great. But the reason he came to Pittsburgh is because he wants to win a Stanley Cup. And there's nobody that understands that more than Chris Letang. There was a story that came out when all the speculation was coming up, even before Karlsson was traded. And Chris Letang said, yeah, I will not play on the power play. I don't care. I want to win a cup. Whatever helps. If that's Erik Karlsson taking my spot on the top power play, then that's fine. I don't care. I just want to win. So if they can maintain that, of course, that's, what you say to a reporter is not necessarily what you believe or what you actually think. But if you can maintain that, and honestly, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the one thing you can't say about them is that they've had a divisive locker room ever with all those stars that have been there over the years. Then if you can maintain that, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Erik Karlsson's defense, that could be an issue. A lot of the pressure is going to go to Marcus Pettersson, but I do think genuinely, and if you look at the numbers last year, it'll really, support the fact that Marcus Pettersson is one of the most underrated defensive defensemen in the league. And this is going to be the opportunity for him to, time to go to work, because you're going to get a lot of national attention and you're going to get a lot of attention just in games in general of people that are going to try to attack Erik Karlsson for his defensive deficiencies. And that's going to be on Pettersson to make up for it.
Two comments on that. What's the over under on how many points his plus minus is going to drop, Pettersson, from last year? And I do have confidence because Sullivan has handled Malkin and Crosby's personalities, and those are two top superstars in the league for a lot of years. So if I was you, I'd be confident it is going to happen, but I just want to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'll do you one better. Crosby's personality is by the book for what you want from a star. Mike Sullivan handled Evgeny Malkin and Phil Kessel's personalities together to get them 2 Stanley Cups. I think that's much more of an impressive feat than Sidney Crosby, who is, the spokesperson and the poster child for going along with the rest of the team.
Yeah, but he still has his quirks. He still has his quirks,
yeah.
and you still have to handle his superstitions and weird things like that. I mean, everyone needs to be handled no matter what kind of personality they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think to Nick's point is I think Crosby helps Sullivan handle those guys more so than being handled, right? He's kind of like a player assistant coach for Sullivan. We've heard interviews about Evgeny Malkin's quirks and how Crosby has to rein him in. It's not Sullivan reining in Malkin, it's Crosby doing it,
Yeah.
But Nick, this stat on Erik Karlsson is I'm not a big plus minus guy, coaches, but I think it's useless. I'm sure you do too. But Karlsson last year was minus.
Let's see what he actually thinks.
No, I'm just suggesting. So Karlsson last year was minus 26. He had 101 points, only 27 power play points, which means he had, my math is right, 74 points and was minus 26, which means he was on 74 even strength points. And he was minus 26, which means he was on the ice for 100 goals against in even strength. So he put up 101 points, but was on the ice for 100 goals against. How much of an impact is he actually having even with that offense? I know he was on a terrible team, so you're hoping the better defensive structure of the Penguins can kind of, minimize that a little bit. But I don't know. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
There's no way to get around it. It is pretty bad. And when it comes to plus minus, I look at it when he gets to the extremes. So a minus 26 with 74 even strength points. Yeah, that's an extreme. And that's when you look at that and take it into account. If it's like, oh, this guy was a -6 throughout the season, it's like, okay, who cares? It's going to happen. Right. Plus minuses are allocated sometimes on a really false basis where somebody is literally 2 inches away from skating off the ice and they get a minus because they didn't get off within 0.3 seconds, whatever. It's plus minus. I think it's like any other stat wherever you can take it and use it to make a point, but it is a part of the broader picture. And in that broader picture, Erik Karlsson does not look great defensively at 5-on-5, but like you mentioned, he played on the San Jose Sharks, man. The San Jose Sharks were awful last season. They were awful. Terrible. And they were a team that their goaltending, there were rumors that Kaapo Kähkönen was going to be in the return. And I was like, I don't know if you need that. Unless you need somebody to carry the bags from city to city, I don't think Kaapo Kähkönen brings really very much of anything. And you saw that last season for the San Jose Sharks. I think poor goaltending, poor defense. It was a tough team. So you're hoping that makes up for all of it. It's not going to make up for everything, though. Like to Coach Ed's point, you're going to need not just Marcus Pettersson. He's going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting, but that bottom six that I already mentioned, they brought in a lot of defensive-minded guys. You're going to need them to step up and be a lot more responsible and a lot more helping out, getting that third guy in, making sure that Erik Karlsson only has to worry about the transition and getting the puck back out of the zone, because if he gets hemmed in, Erik Karlsson is pretty neutralized at that point in time.
Well, it sounds like you and I agree a lot on on Karlsson, so I'm not going to chirp him too much this episode, but fans know how I feel about him anyway. But I'm going to take a step back. How do you feel about, I mean, Dubas seemed to do it in Toronto. He signed Matt Murray, and he has like faith in these goaltenders that haven't really proved themselves, or I guess are injury prone as well. I mean, how much faith do you have in Tristan Jarry, like as the goaltender, especially with Karlsson and all these question marks on D?
What Dubas said is what I usually cling to, but two different things. One, I don't think Kyle Dubas or the Pittsburgh Penguins in general commit that much tenure and that much money to Tristan Jarry without having faith that whatever was injuring him last season, whatever was hampering him last season, is not an issue going like right now. Now, whether or not he gets injured going forward, it's a different story. But whether or not he can get to that level, I'm on a Rangers podcast. I'm not going to pretend that he's ever going to be on the level of Igor Shesterkin. This is the guy that a couple seasons ago finished top 10 in every important goaltending category and then got hurt at the end of the year because a big man in Anders Lee fell on his foot and broke it. That would break my foot. Like, there's people that hold that against Tristan Jarry. That ended a season that he could have finished probably top 10, maybe even top 5 in Vezina voting. And people forget about that because it was followed by that injury and last season. And it's a very what have you done for me lately sport. So, with Tristan Jarry, there is risk because he has been injured all last season and he was injured to finish the season prior to that. And he hasn't done anything in the playoffs, but that's a different worry and a different concern. As far as his health, though, I think going into this year, you have to have faith in that, not only because the team had faith in it to give him that contract, but also because he's shown that at his best, he could be one of the best goaltenders in the league. He's not going to win a Vezina. He's probably not going to be a finalist for a Vezina, but he can do enough to give you not only a chance to win, but steal a couple games. And at the end of the day, if you have the team around him, that's all you're going to ask for from a starting goaltender, particularly in the regular season. In the playoffs, that's a question that has yet to be answered, and that's a question that I wish I could answer for you guys. I can't answer for you until I see a little bit more from him.
Fair enough.
You got me. I forgot about it.
Well, I mean, with Jarry, you're talking about the term. He got a 5-year contract. How old is he? What is he? 28.
28. Yeah.
So he's, this is the prime of his career. He was trending up, I feel like, for a while, maybe a few years ago. And then, he struggled, right? He went through some struggles like any player does. And, I think he's a pretty good goalie. I think he's like a mid-tier goalie. He's not an elite goalie. He's not a bad goalie. So, $5 million to that position, and then you get a project like Neto Jokovic or whatever the hell his name is, to back him up for league minimum. How do you say it? Do you know how to say his name? I've been
Nedeljkovic.
Nedeljkovic. Thank you.
Yeah. It's not a fun one to say.
No, it's actually easier than I made it, to be honest. I made it complicated. But anyway, I think it's a good strategy because then you're only committing really 6. What does he make? 5 point. I'm just doing math in my head. Sorry. 3. So you get a league minimum backup or a $1 million backup, and you're only committing $6.5 million to the goalie position, which is pretty much what Pittsburgh needs to do with all those players up front. Mm-hmm. I think it's fine. I mean, look, if Pittsburgh, the goalie position is so weird, whether you need an elite goalie or not, it's been debated over and over again. So I feel like you're right. Like if Pittsburgh has the team up front, Jarry's good enough to take them, just like Adin Hill was good enough to take Vegas, right? I mean, you can go back, even look at Darcy Kemper was good enough to win for Colorado. These guys aren't great goalies. So it's an interesting thing, but he didn't just add, Jarry for those 5 years. Nola Chari, Ryan Graves, Lars Eller, even some minor contracts like Hinostroza, I think was a good move. So you guys are rebuilding the bottom 6, it looks like, by doing that, right?
Yeah, they're getting a lot of options. I mean, the theme of camp, which is starting in a couple weeks here, is going to be competition. For the first time in, at least since I can remember, since I started actually doing the podcast and covering the team to a certain depth, this is the most open roster spots that they've had going into camp since I started. Because you have, Achari and Nieto and Jeff Carter that are all expected to get bottom 6 spots, but then it's, okay, is Drew O'Connor going to get a spot? Is Rem Pitlick, who came over in the Erik Karlsson trade. He's going to get an opportunity. You have those young guys. You have a guy like Valtteri Puustinen, who's led the AHL Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins in scoring for 2 straight years, and he's somebody that last year during camp was playing with Crosby and Gensel the whole time. So you have a lot of these guys that are going to be fighting for spots in the bottom 6. And I think what Kyle Dubas wanted to do this offseason was say, hey, listen, we're not going to build the best bottom 6 because we don't have the money to do that. We're going to allocate money to $10 million of Erik Karlsson, to getting Tristan Jarry back on the books, to bringing in a guy like Riley Smith to really round out the top 6. But what we're going to do for the bottom 6 is give Mike Sullivan options, because he didn't have that last year. Mike Sullivan had a poor bottom 6 and nobody really supplanted him. Like the call-ups were Drake Kajula. So it wasn't a phenomenal option there. So now he has options, and you mentioned those names, and they brought back Radim Zohorna, who I know the Penguins have really liked. I don't think he's going to really make that big of a difference, but they brought in a guy like Andreas Janssen, who has that offensive upside, could be a change of pace guy. So what they did give Mike Sullivan was options, and I think that's a good plan going forward. Now, you need to really figure that out in training camp in the first couple of weeks, because you can't be playing, the Wheel of Fortune with your bottom 6 for an entire season. So hopefully some of these options, some rise to the top, and it creates an actual bottom 6, which the Pittsburgh Penguins did not have last year.
Yeah. I mean, Noah Chari is one of those guys, I feel like, as he's gotten older, he's now 31. He's going to play another like 8 years and go like team to team, like as a fourth line center, traded to a contender every year. He's a pain in the ass to play against. But Ryan Graves is interesting. I don't know if Coach Ed remembers this. Ryan Graves was a Rangers prospect, traded to Colorado for Chris Begris, who didn't do anything, and then just took off at Colorado, and now he's been a Devil and a Penguin. So that's just how it works being a Rangers fan. Guys just come in and stick it to you years later. But
it sounds like it sounds like the ongoing theme with all our interviews lately is the bottom 6, fourth line question. That was a concern with the Devils. That's a concern with the Rangers. That's a concern with all teams. How are you going to fit those pieces in on those lower level guys that mean so much in the playoffs and on the push for the playoffs? Everybody has that same issue, and everybody has the same questions. If this guy can produce like he did in the AHL, there's a lot of variables involved. In the team that figures that out seems to be the team that rises to the top a little bit.
Yeah, that's the salary cap era. I mean, I don't want to say it's easy to figure out your top 6, but it's a lot easier to spend money on those types of players. The challenge is to find the glue guys and the puzzle pieces that are going to fit for the right amount of money, right?
Yeah, and especially with the flat cap, because a lot of these guys are being forced to take less money than they want, or they do what, I know this is a Penguin-centric one, but they do what Jason Zucker did. Does he want to win a cup? Yeah, I'm sure he wants to win a cup, but he also had one of his best years in the past half decade last season, and he wanted to cash out. So where does he go? He goes to a team that has salary cap space in Arizona. They're not going to compete for anything except for maybe they'll play Arizona State in like a weird whose house is it Mullet Arena Cup, but like he goes there because he thinks that he deserves a little bit more money, and nobody that is worth their weight in contendership has the money to give to him. So you have to go for bottom 6 guys that don't make a lot of money.
That's funny. That's 2 weeks in a row Arizona's come up. Or no, sorry, not 2 weeks in a row. 2 of the 3 weeks. And we had our Islanders episode. We had on a guest who predicted Arizona is going to compete for the 8th seed in the West.
Stefan Rosner.
Yeah. So, and then you said they're going to compete against Arizona State for the Mullet Cup. Oh man.
The only bright side I see on Arizona is I think Logan Cooley steals the Calder from Connor Bedard, but that's about it.
That would be amazing. He's a good player.
Wow.
Logan Cooley's going to be a stud. But all right, we'll quote you on that. And see how the season plays out. I wanted to mention Carl Hagelin. Hagelin just retired. Played 11 seasons, obviously with injuries. It's been tough go of it for him. But he was a salary cap casualty. Started his career with the Rangers. He was a fan favorite, penalty killer. That 2014 run to the Cup final against LA. I feel like I just remember Hagelin with 30 empty net goals that year or something, and 15 breakaways that he missed the net or shot it into the goalie's logo. But he was constantly out there on the PK, intercepting passes, breaking out the other way. He was a pest to play against. I mean, he went to Pittsburgh and won cups. So talk about Carl Hagelin a little bit.
Carl Hagelin to this day is one of my favorite players of the Sidney Crosby era. I mean, the guy was just an amazing human being off the ice, and on the ice. Yeah, he had his deficiencies. He couldn't score goals very, very frequently. Although I do seem to always remember in 2014, he ended the Pittsburgh Penguins season in overtime by scoring 2 goals. And I think that was like a game 5. Penguins sucked that year. You know, they weren't that great. They shouldn't have been in the playoffs. But I do remember Carl Hagelin sending us home. And then obviously, you know, when he came to Pittsburgh, he fit right in. He was Sidney Crosby's best friend. He was, you know, the H in the HBK line. And he's a guy that, when the Penguins traded him away for Tanner Pearson, you looked at it and you said that might be the beginning of the end there. Now, they did sign Jack Johnson before that earlier in the season, so that was the true beginning of the end. But the trade of Carl Hagelin just to really give an actual jolt to the locker room, it made no sense. And that's when you started looking at Jim Rutherford and saying, all right, we're on the other side here of all those amazing moves that he made to bring the 2016 Cup and the 2017 Cup. When you trade Carl Hagelin to try to send a message to the locker room, you knew that wasn't going to go over well, and it was going to get the negative response, and it did. And that just goes to show, you know, Carl Hagelin, tremendous teammate. And also, I mean, people forget in Pittsburgh, and I had to remind him when Carl Hagelin retired, the Nick Bonino goal in 2016, Carl Hagelin helped set that up. The empty net goal in 2017 to close out the Stanley Cup. Anytime you can say you scored the last goal of an NHL season, it's a huge accomplishment. And it's an empty net goal. Yes, he was great at empty net goals because
he was the king of empty net goals.
But if you go back and watch that empty net goal, he holds on to that puck, and it looks like if you're playing NHL, you hold the 2 sticks, and he held it from the blue line in, because he knew, I've seen too many people. And he was quoted on a story by, I believe it was DK Pittsburgh Sports. He was quoted after that saying, I've seen too many times the highlight reel of somebody thinking it's an empty net goal and the puck jumping off their stick, and they look like an idiot. He's like, I was not letting that happen to me in game 6 of the Stanley Cup final. So I skated behind the puck and I kept it in front of me. And the second that I got right into the blue paint, fired it home, and then he hit the Hulk Hogan celly, and it was all over. You know, I loved Carl Hagelin. I still have a Carl Hagelin Penguins jersey hanging up in my closet. Probably one of few people that actually went out and got the jersey. But, you know, it's unfortunate that he had to end his career the way it happened and not on his terms. But I mean, talk about one of the best just depth players and one of the best just ancillary players of the past, 15 years. Somebody that just quietly was there and did his job and did it well.
Cuz you didn't mention the overtime goal against Pittsburgh that year.
No, he just mentioned it.
I mentioned it. Don't worry.
In your intro, you said something about just like the penalty kill, but the OT goal was the biggest.
Well, I just remember watching the finals and the promo before, when all the talking heads get on and they start like talking about a player and the impact they've had, like in the playoff game, they're like highlighting a guy. They highlighted Carl Hagelin. I think it was like game. I don't remember what game it was, but I just remember him skating around in warmups and they're zooming in on Carl Hagelin, talking about how much of a beast he's been all playoffs, his penalty killing efficiency. And I was just like, man, this guy really is growing. Obviously, we didn't get to keep him. It was just fun watching, the Rangers. He was a 6th round pick. I can't. When's the last time the Rangers had a 6th round pick develop into like a, piece on the team that contributes in a playoff game? Like I have no idea. I mean,
Henrik Lundqvist.
I was about to say Henrik Lundqvist.
That was before Hagelin.
Oh, okay,
Lundqvist was before it. Hagelin was after Lundqvist. But I'm just saying, like, when's the last time they had that happen? I don't know. They haven't been drafting too well late in the drafts. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a great little speech about Hagelin you gave there. I mean, he really is like a fun player to watch, and he was one of my favorites too. So I was sad to see him go when he went to Anaheim, but
he always looked like he was having fun out there,
Yeah.
Congrats to him on a great career, and it's sad that, like you said, it's not on his own terms. Retiring from severe eye issues, so congrats to Hagelin on a great career, and just another ex-Ranger to win cups. We should make the list. Ryan McDonough, Carl Hagelin. I'm sure there's more. we can make the list. But anyway, so Pittsburgh last year misses the playoffs, like you said, by 1 point. We've been looking around the Metro. We met with the Islanders group and the Devils group, trying to figure out where the Rangers are going to fit this year, and where those teams' fans think they're going to fit. So the Islanders group is pretty confident they're going to compete for a top 3 spot in the Metro. And the Devils group is pretty confident they got the top 2, one of the top 2 spots. So I'm just curious, where do you think Pittsburgh falls? Are they a wild card team? Are they competing for the top 3? Are they more of like a bubble team that misses? Like, what do you think?
See, I don't think anybody in this division is really going to catch the Carolina Hurricanes. I think the Hurricanes, again, regular season, postseason's a different story, and the Hurricanes have proven that over the past couple of seasons. I think regular season, though, there's no team as deep as the Carolina Hurricanes in the Metro. And I would say the New Jersey Devils are close, but just not on that level. I think the Penguins realistically are fighting for that 3rd spot with the New York Rangers. I have no expectations for the New York Islanders because, again, it's Ilya Sorokin and his band of merry men. I don't really think the rest of the merry men are going to be able to live up to that. But I do think it's between the Penguins and the Rangers for the 3rd spot. That's where I see them heading into the season. Obviously, health is the preliminary factor in all of this. But if the Penguins can stay relatively healthy, especially their top stars, I think they battle for one of those the top 3 spot, probably number 3 with the Rangers.
Yeah,
all I have to say is if we ever have a paintball match with all of our rivalry people and us and there, oh my
Nick's
God,
on our team.
There's going to be some shots to be fired.
Yeah, we're
Nick's
talking
on
about
our
setting
team
up
for
a
sure.
paintball match with our Islanders podcast rivals. That'll be interesting. So if you want to join, you could play on our team for sure.
Hey, I'll be up.
But I asked that question for a reason, because I think the Atlantic Division has a pretty solid chance of claiming 2 wild cards this year. Yeah. There's just I think there's a lot of teams there that are taking a step. So I feel like if it's between the Rangers and Penguins, it could possibly be only one of them making the playoffs, which is crazy to say. The East is just very deep. So I don't know. I think every team in the Metro, other than the Devils and Hurricanes, is thinking they can compete for that 3rd spot. It's kind of open competition right now, except maybe Philly and Columbus.
I don't know. I kind of put Washington in that category too. I don't know if this is just, Pittsburgh lens, but I really think that they're just Ovi's goal chase and that's it. You look at what they did last season. Yeah, there were a lot of injuries, but man, they're just as old as the Penguins, but with not as much marketable offense. So I don't know. I have not a lot of faith in Washington. I have more faith in hard to say, but I have more faith in the Islanders simply because they actually know how to play a complete team game than I do the Washington Capitals. But I do think that it's really, 2 teams at the top, Carolina, New Jersey. I think it's really 2 teams in that 3-4 range. And I think it's New York and Pittsburgh. And I think that's razor thin between the 2. And then I think it's the rest of the division, personally, in my eyes, whenever I look at it.
Man, you're coming on here and you're talking smack about the Islanders. I love it. Welcome to the podcast. I'm just curious though, is that are you doing that as like a joke, or like do the Penguins fans you guys actually have like a rivalry with the Islanders, like or is it more with the Islanders or Rangers, would you say?
I would say it's probably more with the Rangers. There's more history there, obviously, especially the old heads.
A lot of playoff rounds.
Yeah, there's a lot of playoff rounds that go back and forth as well. And especially for a team in the Rangers that have always had the marketable stars, have always had the marquee, the way that the Pittsburgh Penguins have. Whereas the New York Islanders, I mean, they're not little brother. That's the Columbus Blue Jackets and always will be. But the New York Islanders, when the Penguins look at them, yeah, they struggled the past couple of years, but it always seems to be, especially last season, the Penguins didn't beat the Islanders, but they were better than the Islanders in almost every game. Like when you watched it, you're like, how is this happening? And it just feels like when you look at the Islanders, that team game, that Barry Trotz-esque, it just feels like, okay, these guys know how to play a team game, but the talent is not there. Whereas you look at the Rangers, the talent's there. And that is something that, Penguins fans look at and they say, okay, this should be a rivalry. It shouldn't be a rivalry with the New York Islanders. That, and, I don't think Penguins fans and Islanders fans, there's rivalries between fan bases, but there's a little bit extra hatred in there. I'm not sure why. Not from me. not for me. I don't know. I've never been to Long Island.
I'm not a part of it.
I don't hate anybody, but there seems to be a lot of hatred, a lot of bad blood between Penguins and Islanders fans, and I don't necessarily know what it's from, other than maybe the fact that the Islanders have beaten the Penguins a couple times in the playoffs over the past couple of years, but that sparks every rivalry playoff series, and like you mentioned, Little Ed, Rangers Penguins. There's been eras where it's those matchups always come back.
Yep.
Could the rivalry with the Islanders be going back to when the Islanders beat them, being 3 games down?
Back in 1993, there are people.
No, wasn't it in like 79? But Pittsburgh was 3-0, and the Island. It was one of the few times they came back. No,
it was 90. It was 93. It was Derek King and that team, that Islanders team.
Yeah, I know 93 had happened, and that was the best Pittsburgh Penguins team in the history of the organization. The only team to win the President's Trophy, and they got reverse swept.
I think it's 1979.
Mike, look that up.
I don't think it's 1979.
There might be one. I mean, I wasn't even a thought, so I couldn't tell you in the 1979. You weren't even that was pre-Lemieux.
Your dad's eye yet.
Yeah, that was pre-Lemieux.
That's where Nick draws the line on his fandom.
Right there.
What's the year that Graves /Lemieux and broke his arm or whatever? Was that 92 also? 93?
That was 92, because that was the second Penguins Cup run. Because they had
so you guys went back to back.
They had Talkett that year, so they had somebody to actually respond.
Was it? It was the second cup. You did it without Lemieux after he got hurt.
Oh, he came back.
No, he came back. That was
he came back. That was the year they played the Blackhawks and just absolutely obliterated them in the finals, despite the Blackhawks having Dominic Hasek. Yeah,
They had Ed Belfour, right? Oh no, they had Hasek that year.
They had both.
They had both.
They had both, because every time I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, Ed Belfour. Oh wait, Hasek. And I'm like, oh wait, the Penguins ran up the score on him a couple times, so they had to switch a couple times.
Yeah, that Penguins team was pretty good.
It's ridiculous.
So this came up kind of unintentionally with Nick on the Devils episode. Who's your most hate? Well, you said you. Oh, I'm sorry, not Nick. Neil. Yeah, Neil Villapiano.
Oh yeah.
Who's your most hated Ranger? I know you say you don't hate anybody, so your most disliked Ranger.
My most disliked Ranger. Wow. I don't know if there's one on the team right now. Whichever Strome you had, I did not like. I think it was Dylan.
I think
Ryan.
You said that last year.
Yeah,
it was Ryan.
Yeah,
it was Ryan.
Well, there's only 2.
Exactly. Because I was like, this guy acts like, his crap doesn't stink. And he really is like the 10th best player on this team. And it's only because of the player. Like, he's playing with Artemi Panarin. He's acting like he's driving the line. I was like, man, this guy just gets under my skin, because, he sellies like he's Ovechkin, but he plays like he's, I don't even know. Like, I just try
Ryan Strome.
There you go. He plays like he's Ryan Strome. That's the only guy that really I was just like, really? Like,
yeah.
You think, but like everybody, I loved Hagelin. I loved Matt Zuccarello, watching those guys play. And, I really don't have any ill will towards most Rangers. But Strome,
so no current ones.
What about Trouba, Kreider?
See, Trouba, I don't know. That's a weird situation where I do think he does some stuff that toes the line, and there's sometimes it borders on dirty, but he's a physical player. That's going to happen. It's going to happen. Now, whether or not he gets, repercussions, that's not his fault. That's the league's fault. And the league has their own issues with player safety, but I don't have anything against Trouba because he plays physically. Now, when he knocks Crosby out of the playoffs, am I going to be a little upset? Yeah. Cause I think that cost the Penguins a series, but do I think that inherently it's his fault that he plays physically and then he does have some dirty hits? No, it happens when you play that physically and you're that much bigger than some of your opponents.
All right. I tried to get under Nick's skin, but it seems that he's impenetrable.
I'm cool. Cool as a
cool.
Yeah,
Neil was cool too until we started talking about Kreider and Trouba. So.
Well, yeah, I know Neil. We go back to THPN. He's still with THPN, but we go back to when I was with THPN. There's some words you can throw in there that gets the jersey out of him, and that, oh boy, here he comes.
Yeah, he was calm and collected until the end when Kreider came up, and he's like, he just runs goalies. He was like going off. We were like, "Whoa, Neil! Whoa, you lost the trolling battle, Neil." I love Neil though. He's been on our show a few times. He's great, and he does a great job over there talking about the Devils, which must be fun. But jeez, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, hated. So I feel the same way. Like younger, I hated Crosby. I feel like when did he start? What was his year? Like 2005. So I was like 20 years old, something like that. So I hated him. First of all, the Rangers should have gotten that pick. We had the odds in the draft to get that pick. We sucked. We traded everybody before the lockout. We traded all our veterans to clear space to suck and tank. And we had the odds for the pick based on the 3-year average of the standings. And we ended up falling in the draft and got Mark Stahl. Okay. Who had a good career. Yeah. I liked Mark Stahl, but he ain't Sidney Crosby. So he should have been a Ranger. So I started off bitter. And then he came into the league and he's whining. And he was just like really hard to root for, for a while. But he ended up flipping that for me. I feel like he's grown on me where now he's like, he's the real deal. He's a great guy. He does a lot of philanthropic work. He's a good leader. So he flipped it. He was able to change it. I don't really hate Crosby anymore. I don't know. Do we hate any Penguins, Ed? Do you hate anybody?
Erik Karlsson.
Yeah, he really hates Erik Karlsson. Thinks that he shouldn't have won
the thing is,
Norris
like,
Trophy.
I see interviews of his and stuff, and I'm sure I like him as a person. I just can't stand like how the league shoves him down your throat. He's obviously a phenomenal 100-point player, but he shouldn't have won the Norris Trophy at minus 27. I don't care what team you're on. It's just I don't know.
Well, I
don't hate him as a person. I hate him as a hockey player. I think he should play forward. Let's just put it that way.
Well, that's fair. And here's the thing. I know the Norris Trophy. I know what it's supposed to be.
I said I wasn't going to chirp, but there it is.
But I also know what it is. And I mean, the man did put up more points than anybody since Bobby Orr. That does, that does tip the scales a little bit. I know the minus 26 is not a good look, but once you get in the same realm as Bobby Orr, I think there's some recognition there. And man, Ed, if you don't like the fact that the league is pushing him down your throat before, he's with the Penguins now. It's going to be a tough year for you.
Thank God.
They're going to be on prime time. It's going to be a disaster.
Thank God we don't have Pierre. We don't have Pierre doing games anymore. Erik Karlsson and Christopher Letang grew up as best friends and blah, 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 blah. I could hear him saying it.
No, I mean we can have the conversation. They should just make another award or another trophy. But
they should have
the point. I'm sure
the Erik Karlsson
beat that to death.
That's what it would be. It would be the Erik Karlsson award.
And the only people eligible for it will be 3-time Norris Trophy winners. Like Erik Karlsson.
Oh God.
I love trolling my cousin. Sorry. We'll see. It's be interesting with the power play. Before we let you go, I want to talk about the power play for Pittsburgh. We didn't even talk about that. Who the five guys?
Do we have to talk about it?
Who's your power play one unit?
If all healthy.
And Letang?
See, here's the thing. The Penguins power play hasn't been the same since Phil Kessel left in 2019 because nobody that they've had in that spot, and they've kept the same structure, but nobody that they've had in that spot, Rust, Raquel, Jared McCann, weirdly enough, for the 1 year they had him there, was excellent. That's the sole year that they finished 4th or in the top 10 since Phil Kessel has left. So weirdly enough, Jared McCann worked, but they haven't had anybody that really is that much of a danger or a threat. I think that Letang would fit well there, especially because Karlsson is going to quarterback the power play regardless. That's his spot now. But I also think, heading into this season, the Penguins would be stupid not to tailor their power play more towards Karlsson and switch things up to really accentuate his skill set because he's a once-in-a-generation player at that position, specifically. Not defense, but once-in-a-generation as power play quarterback. You have to tailor it to him. And when you have a guy like Malkin with his one-timer, you have to open that up more, which they don't do on their power play. So I think it's, they're 5, if all healthy, It's not going to be Letang because I think they're going to try to shelter Letang's minutes a little bit more now that they have a guy in Karlsson. I think it goes Karlsson and Malkin up on the top. You have Crosby playing down low, and then you have Gensel in the bumper when he comes back from injury. And I think you probably see Rickard Rakell on that left wall, at least to start, and they'll probably put Rust there a couple times if things don't work out.
Let's take a prediction of their power play percentage. That's what we all should do.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough because they're volatile. They have the talent to be top 5, but do they put it together has always been the question. Some years they do, some years they don't. I would like to think with Karlsson they get back into the top 5 again, but they just seem to find ways to aggravate.
Yeah, I want to see what it was last year.
I think it was 14th at like 19.6% or something like that. I might be off on that.
Hold on.
I think it's going to be like. I think it's going to be like 30%.
30%.
Yeah, it's going to. I mean, you guys are pumping up Karlsson. I mean, if he did that with the Sharks,
32.4%. The Oilers power play was 32.4%.
Yeah, I think the Penguins could be up there near 30%. You're pumping up Karlsson. You have Crosby, Malkin. I mean, you watch Crosby alone making plays.
Yeah,
Getzel's going to be pumping goals home.
Penguins were 14th at 21.7%.
Oh, they beat 21.
Oh, better.
Rangers were 7th.
My prediction. I'm going with 26%.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. I think they're going to have a better power play with Karlsson, obviously, and if they were already 21.7% last year, I think I'll say 25.5. I think is pretty good. I'll go closest without going over, right, Ed?
I was about to say,
yeah,
the price is right, cousin Ed.
Yeah, I'll go 25.
All right, R.I.P.
Bob
Barker.
30.5.
30.5. That would be great. If it's 30.5, I will come back on this show and I will just heap your praise. I will heap your praises regardless, Coach Ed. If it's over 30%,
what do you think, Nick?
I don't know if they get the 30. I don't think 30 is like insane. We have to remember that is insane. Like the Oilers were 32, but the Oilers also broke an NHL record. Like there's a reason that was being talked about.
Against the Oilers went 1 for 3 on the power play for the whole season. Like that's crazy.
Against the Rangers alone, they're going to be about 75%.
True.
Well, that's a different conversation. That's a different prediction.
I'll say they go 26.3. I'll say they're markedly better, but I don't think they get all the way to 30.
26.3. You're making fun of me for going 0.5. You go 0.3.
Well,
Trying to be exact.
Yeah, if you hit it, you look like a genius. If you don't hit it, you're like, what? I was giving a percentage on September 5th. What is it?
Yeah. Well, here's hoping. Here's hoping we're all wrong and it drops to 19, like you said. But we'll see. Nick, thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate your time, and you're doing a good job over there at the Ice-Burgh Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast. So check him out on Tip of the Ice-Burgh, and we'll let you go. We could talk all night, but we do appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we have you on back soon and get a little rivalry going during the season.
Nick, before we let you go, give us one, we'll call it like a fantasy hockey sleeper pick from the Penguins. Who do you think is going to have like a low-key big year? Or who do you want, or who do you feel like they need to have a low-key big year?
Well, a lot of fans are down on Brian Rust. And I don't know if that's low-key. I feel like a lot of people that are into fantasy know Brian Rust because of those couple of years where he was banging on, 30 goals almost. But I think that coming into this season, he's a guy that's going to go off. Like he's a guy that now that there's, they've cleared the runway for him to have an offensive season. So I think if you have, a lower round pick and Brian Rust is available and you want to fill him into one of your last couple of spots, I think Brian Rust is the sleeper for the Pittsburgh Penguins because I think he has a 30-goal season this year. I've said that on our podcast. That's one of the things I'm most bullish about from this summer is that Brian Rust is going to have a great year.
All right. Well, I'll use that in my drafts. Thank you. But anyway, yeah, thanks for coming on. And, we'll have you back on soon. We'll talk some hockey.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Good luck, Neil. Great job.
Nick.
Give Coach a break. It's late. It's
said
late.
I
Neil.
said, good luck, Nick. Great job. What do you mean?
we'll let
Neil.
the,
Okay, we'll clip.
we'll let the audio figure it out. The truth is, it was said. Whatever was said. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, guys.
Later, buddy.
Coach calls him Neil as we leave.
I think I said Nick.
Okay.
You said Neil 100%. I love it. Anyway, yeah, great guy, man. What a lot of fun talking Penguins, and I really liked what he said about Hagelin. I don't know. Did you guys feel that way about Hagelin when he was a Ranger? I really loved Hagelin. He was one of my favorites.
We made fun of him a lot, but brings up a lot of good memories. The one thing I didn't want to bore him with the story. Remember when we were all at the bar and that kid with the that looked like Hagelin was there when we were watching the playoff game? And he had the long blonde hair, and we were like, "What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be in Pittsburgh?"
And he was like, "Huh?"
He's like, "What are you talking about?" Might have to dig up that photo as a little tribute.
Oh my god, that's really funny.
Yeah,
It's a great.
it might have been the game that he
Great
scored. That was that the overtime? No, we were there for the Capitals series, I think.
No, the
Right?
game he scored the overtimes, and we were there with Marco, and he left. That's what
Oh, right at the yeah.
No,
yeah.
the game that we went to was against Washington.
Yeah, at the bar. We were at Stout
in overtime. Step on.
Yeah.
The game winner. That's one of the best calls, non-Sam Ranger calls, non-Sam ones that I remember. That call was unbelievable.
Nick has the.
What a fun team that was, man. What a fun team that was, the Rangers. If only they had landed Crosby in that draft. They would have had Crosby and Stepan 1-2. Would have been beautiful. Who knows? Everything would have been different, right? Yeah, because then their draft picks would have been different and blah, blah, blah. I know, I get it. But they were just missing that elite player.
Yeah, they were just missing Sidney Crosby. Shucks.
Yeah.
Too bad.
All right, so
we thought we had it in Laffy. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, so next week, tune in. We're going to talk some Bruins Rangers. That's another long-time rivalry. Mikey Piersack coming on for that one.
Mikey Piersack will be in, and we got a new guest coming on from a Bruins podcast.
Mike,
Stay tuned for that.
Can you clip onto the picture for next week for the episode, for Instagram and for the thing, the picture of Mikey Piersack on the boat in Shark Week?
Oh, definitely.
I could find something.
We got to put that on there. That was unbelievable.
Yeah. So next week, obviously Mikey Piersack does a great job, but we wanted to expand our horizons a little bit and grab a Bruins podcast representative. So we're having Evan Marinovsky. He's an editor of the New England Hockey Journal, and he's the host of the Bruins Beat podcast. So looking forward to that one. Like I said, obviously Mikey P knows his Bruins, but someone who covers it professionally is a different perspective. So we're looking forward to that. So hopefully we got some good banter between Mikey and Evan.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's always fun to talk Bruins, and after last year's events, it'll be fun. But, it's funny so far before we wrap up.
Hold on a minute. Before we wrap up, 1974-75, Penguins led the series 3-0. Only 4 teams in NHL history have ever come back from 3-0, and the Islanders beat the Penguins. So I was wrong on the
70,
year.
You said 79.
I was wrong on the year.
You were wrong.
But you can't expect Nick to know that.
Well, I didn't expect it to. I said maybe that's why they hate the Islanders.
I was going to say, because the Rangers made it to the finals in 79.
There's no way
the Islanders can play the Penguins.
I don't know why Coach brought that up as as proof that he was right or something when he was just wrong. Like you were wrong.
It wasn't wrong. It happened. They came back.
No one said it didn't happen. We said it didn't happen in 1979.
Well, you had no idea that I was wrong with the year.
Coach, what color were the Penguins jerseys in 1975?
They were the powder blue and black.
Those were nice, those powder blues. Anyway, what was I going to say? I don't remember. Oh, every team we bring on thinks they're competing for that third spot in the Metro. I bet you when we talk to the Capitals fans, and everybody thinks that's like the third spot. So that just shows you the lack of respect the Rangers are getting this year. They think the Rangers are ripe for the picking and can be taken. Nobody's thinking Carolina or New Jersey are going to be caught. But we'll see. We'll have to let the season play out. And I don't know. I saw this post, by the way. Did you guys see this
in
thing
Neil's
I sent
words,
you?
I don't know what's going to happen.
Did you guys see the post I sent you about Stamkos?
Yeah.
The Big Head Hockey. If you guys don't follow Big Head Hockey, a free ad, check them out on Twitter. They're pretty cool. They've always got this random information and stats and stuff. So posted that the Rangers were close to a deal, coach, for Steven Stamkos in his sophomore season. The deal was rumored to be to the Rangers, Steven Stamkos, to the Lightning, any two of the following plus additional picks. Two of these guys, Michael Del Zotto, Ryan Callahan, Brandon Dubinsky, Dan Girardi, and Evgeny Grachev. Would have traded all five of those guys for Steven Stamkos.
Yeah.
It got almost to the finish line, but Tampa's co-owner had to step in and say no. Like, we're not trading this kid. He's only in his second season. And then obviously the rest is history. But imagine if they had pulled that deal off in 2010, they would have had Stamkos for those playoff runs in the mid tens.
But it says that the 2014 finals could have easily gone towards NYR, but who's to say they would have even made the finals without Girardi, Dubinsky, Callahan? It's hard to say. I mean, Girardi was a huge part of that defense. I mean, yeah, obviously I'm a bias towards him, but those are tough players to give up, obviously, for a player like Stamkos. But
Callahan went, because they wouldn't have got St. Louis for Callahan.
Right.
And I think
there's
Dubinsky
a bunch of different
Nash.
scenarios on that tweet, which are all pretty interesting.
They wouldn't have had Nash because they traded Dubinsky for Nash. So
that's what it says down here too. Yeah. Rick Nash likely never becomes a Ranger. In parentheses, Buchnevich wouldn't be a Ranger either, as his pick was a part of that trade.
That's true.
That
part
would
of
have
the
been
trade.
This is a trade tree this is all a trade tree right here for Cousin Ed. A potential trade tree.
Well, the trade tree of the Rick Nash trade is an interesting one. The Buchnevich trade tree, coach, who'd the Rangers get for Sammy Blais, by the way, when they traded him to St. Louis? Does anybody remember? I can't remember who it was.
Wasn't it just a pick?
No. I think they got some scrub AHL guy.
Oh, no. I don't remember. It wasn't Decision.
I can't remember.
That was from Vegas.
Decision was on waivers. I can't remember who they got for Blais, but they traded that second round pick they got for Bushi. So that trade tree is over. Pretty sure it's done. It's wrapped up. And it ended up with Blais and Buchnevich both in St. Louis.
It was Tarasenko.
Oh, it was the Tarasenko trade. Some AHL scrub, I said. Yeah, so Tarasenko walked.
And Blais was on the highlights of St. Louis games all the rest of the season.
Yeah, he scored like 10 goals. Scored 0 at the Rangers. How many did the Rangers get any picks with Tarasenko?
Oh, I just
no, they got Mikkola.
Mikkola walked. Tarasenko walked. So that's it. It's done. Trade tree's over. Nothing for Buchnevich. They pretty much just gave Buchnevich to St. Louis for nothing. That's what happened. Oh, God. Anyway, on that note, speaking of Buchnevich, Ed, I saw you sent me, one of the fans was asking about why my dog has been missing from behind me. Well, he had surgery. He's doing okay. He's recovering fine. Everything's okay. But yeah, he's been going through some medical issues. He just had some growths removed on his back. He'll be back, I'm sure, pushing on the door as you'll see him go in and out. He opens the door. You can see my hallway every episode. And he'll be back on the couch in his spot probably next week. So thank you for asking, but he's doing fine. Anyway, shout out to
wasn't there another question that Karen submitted for you to answer, for someone submitted?
There was.
We submitted about how we couldn't sign Tarasenko.
Yeah. So I tried to explain this previously to Coach, and it's still not getting through to him. So maybe it'll get through to everyone else. But it's the Rangers signing all these guys for $800,000 is not. You can't just add up all those salaries and say they should have just gave all of that money to Tarasenko, because all of those guys aren't going to be on the NHL roster, so they are not going to all count against the salary cap. The Rangers have the space for maybe 1, 2, or 3 of those guys to be on the roster and counting as a cap. So really, they had about $2 million to spend. And if they gave all of that to Tarasenko, instead of spreading it out amongst 3 players, they wouldn't be able to ice a full roster. So it's not as simple as saying don't sign anybody and just give it all to Tarasenko.
So they should have just lines.
They should have what?
Just play with 3 lines.
Play with 3 lines. Yeah, they tried that last year when they made the trade for Kane.
Yeah.
They had to send Schneider down and play with like 4D. And then Lindgren got hurt. They tried that last year. Anyway.
2 things that we kind of forgot to bring up last week. One, Hedl hitting the gym. So I think he could he be listening to the podcast. But no.
Hedl's a big sleeper for me in fantasy hockey this year. He's
looking
ready
good.
to go, man.
Yeah, he's looking ready. He's hitting the gym for sure, and that's exactly what he needs, I think. And then the other thing is Rupper believes that Kakko could reach 30 goals next season or this season. So, did we talk about that actually?
No, we texted about it.
We texted about it?
Yeah, I feel like Kakko.
Rupper's very high on the Rangers this year.
What did he have last year, Kakko? 19 or 18?
I believe 18.
He was up there. He had 40 points, I think. 30 goals, man. Depends. If he plays a full season with Mika Zibanejad and gets power play time, he'll score 30 goals.
So then he's not getting 3 goals.
If he's going to be on the third line, playing second line, get no power play time, that 30 goals is going to be hard to get. It's going to be hard. It's a big number. But maybe they put him there instead of Trocheck, I don't know. I think they got to – I like Trocheck. He had 60 points last year, and I feel like he didn't really score that much, but he did. He had 60 points. When I saw that, I was like, damn.
First year with a new team. Hopefully this year he'll settle in a little bit more.
But I like his intangibles, so I feel like Trocheck needs to kind of settle in less of a scoring role and just focus on his intangibles and bring some energy to the game and get under the skin of the opponent and let Hedl and Kakko go and score because they're not good at the intangibles.
Right.
So let Trocheck handle that. So that's where my mind is. We'll see what this
someone who scored a lot of points not to score a lot of points.
No, it's not that I don't want him to score a lot of points. I'm saying that I think Hedl can score that many points or more in a scoring role. So I don't really think moving Trocheck to an intangible role hurts the team. I think Hedl can step right in and do that, and Kakko could step up and produce. So give him the opportunity to do it, and it's not going to hurt the team. Trocheck may score less points by doing that, but he's way better at the little nuances of the game, the face-offs, positionally, defensively, all that stuff. I'd rather Trocheck be excelling at that stuff and putting up 40, 45 and let Hedl and Kakko go score goals and points. That's just my thoughts initially.
Yeah.
We'll see what the coach thinks, though. I know Coach Ed disagrees. We wouldn't have a show if he didn't. So, anyway, Mikey, did you look that up from earlier in the episode? Has any player ever played for all 6 original teams?
Victor Ivan Lynn is the only player in NHL history to play for all 6.
Who is that?
He's got 3 first names. Who is he, Ricky Bobby?
Canadian professional ice hockey player. Played in the NHL from 1943 to 1954. Is the only player in NHL history to play for all original 6 teams.
Wow, that is wild.
For all the teams in 10 years.
And how many games did he play? How many did he play with the Rangers?
That I don't know.
They should make a suitcase award.
He played 1 game with the Rangers.
That's great.
Yeah, 1 game.
One with the Rangers, 3 with Detroit, 2 with Montreal. And then he played a bunch of years with Toronto, a couple with Boston, and a couple with Chicago. That's pretty crazy.
He's the original suitcase. What was his name? That's a good tweet.
His name is Vic Lynn on Hockey DB. And Coach, you got to see this guy's picture.
How do you spell it?
It's got the mullet.
The Hockey DB. No, that's a shadow. You can't share screen on this thing. VIC and then LYNN. The Hockey DB picture is worse, but wow, good job, Mike. I was waiting for you to chime in with that. All right, boys, good episode. Thank you to our sponsors. We're looking forward to the season and getting back on track. Getting out there and watching the games and buying some cookies, all that good stuff. And thank you to our fans for following us all summer. Keep up with the Rivalry Tour. We got a few more left before the season starts. I think opening night is the 10th of October. So we're heading there. We're almost, 35 days away? We're getting close. 10th of
October. The season's starting later. I thought they wanted the playoffs to end earlier. They're starting later. Used to be the second.
I think the Rangers have 15 back-to-backs this year. I'm sure they do. I'm just kidding, but I'm sure they do. All right, boys. It's been fun. Till next week.
Have a good night, fellas.
Love you guys. Let's go Rangers.
Love you guys.
Love you guys.